She thought pushing him over that cliff would set her free. But the dead never stay silent for long. Welcome to Clock Strike's 3 story time. Let's begin. She shoved him off a cliff. Now he's back from the grave. On a rain-slicked night in Shoreditch, Lucy Whitby stumbled out of a neon-lit bar, her breath sour with gin and her eyes glassy from a sleepless week. The heavy bass still pounded in her skull as she pulled her designer trench coat tighter, scanning the empty street behind her. At 32, Lucy looked like she had stepped out of a glossy magazine. High cheekbones, flawless skin, and hair so perfectly styled it seemed to repel the London drizzle. She was the face of her company, the magnetic force investors and journalists adored. But under that polished veneer, Lucy was a woman on the verge of implosion. She had always been the face. Daniel, her husband, had been the mind. They met at university. She was drawn to his quiet brilliance, his raw potential. Even then, Lucy saw him not as a partner, but as a meal ticket to the life she craved. Together, they built a tech empire. She charmed investors and dazzled the press, while Daniel coded deep into the night, creating systems so complex even their top engineers couldn't fully understand them. Daniel didn't want fame. He wanted to build something meaningful, but Lucy craved it. The magazine covers, the accolades, the hidden smirks from rivals when she walked into a room dripping in couture. Behind the scenes, her life was spiraling. Lucy had developed a compulsive shopping addiction, blowing through credit cards on designer clothes, jewelry, private memberships, luxury gadgets. When that thrill faded, she started again, chasing the high of being admired and envied. By the time she realized the depth of her debt, it had metastasized into millions owed to faceless banks and aggressive collectors who threatened to expose her secrets. And then there was Daniel's betrayal. For all his awkward sweetness, Daniel wasn't faithful. Lucy found out about the conference flings, the late-night debugging sessions that ended in hotel rooms with junior developers or wide-eyed tech groupies. He always came crawling back with apologies, saying he was weak and ashamed. Lucy forgave him publicly, but inside, her heart curdled into something cold and sharp. Then Daniel let slip a secret that would change everything. A new AI prototype. A predictive system so advanced it could anticipate global market shifts, spot fraud before it began, even destabilize entire economies. It was genius, terrifying genius. Daniel hadn't filed patents yet. He was terrified it would be abused. Only Lucy knew about it, and in her mind, it was her golden ticket. A week later, Daniel suggested they take a private plane up to the Scottish Highlands. "We need a reset," he had said. "Time to reconnect, to fix things between us." Lucy agreed, hiding the acid behind her bright smile. The flight began under clear skies, but halfway there, a violent storm rolled in. the plane shuddering as Daniel fought the controls. Lucy screamed for him to turn back, but he was too focused, his hands white-knuckled on the yoke. When they crashed, Lucy crawled free first. Her head pounded, blood dripping down her temple. The smell of jet fuel mixed with the icy mountain air. Behind her, Daniel's voice rose, ragged and terrified. "Lucy, help me!" She turned and saw him pinned in the wreckage, one leg trapped beneath twisted metal, his eyes wide with panic. She tried to pull at the debris, but it barely shifted. Every tug made the plane groan. The wreckage balanced precariously on the edge of a sheer cliff, the void below waiting to swallow them both. If she kept trying, she might free Daniel, or send them both plummeting to their deaths. In that moment, Lucy saw everything clearly. The debts, the shame, the secret AI that could make her untouchable. The millions in Daniel's life insurance she could claim. The company could be hers alone. She didn't need him anymore. A chance to survive, to win. In that split second, she saw it all. The designer dresses she hadn't yet worn, the magazine covers, the boardrooms that would bow to her, all glittering before her like a devil's bargain. All she had to do was let go. Her heart thundered. The choice was clear, cold, and final. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then, with one final, calculated pull on the metal beam, she felt the plane shift violently beneath her fingers. The nose of the wreckage tilted forward, the entire fuselage lurching toward the abyss. Daniel's scream cut through the storm like a blade as the wreckage broke free and plunged over the cliff. Lucy stood there, frozen, listening to the sickening crash echo up from below. Later, she told the authorities that she had tried desperately to free him, but the plane broke and he slipped from her grasp. Tears in her eyes, voice trembling, she told the story of the devoted wife who nearly saved her genius husband. The world believed her, praising her as the brilliant widow, the survivor dedicated to carrying on her husband's legacy. Investors flocked to her, charmed by her tragic story and beauty. But Lucy knew the truth. She hadn't just left Daniel behind. She had sealed his fate with her own hands, and deep down, she knew she would never truly escape him. In the weeks after Daniel's death, Lucy transformed into a media darling. The tragic widow, the genius's beautiful muse, now alone, carrying the torch of his legacy. Magazine covers gushed about her strength, her unbreakable spirit. Her Instagram overflowed with sympathetic comments and heart emojis. Investors rushed to her side, eager to secure their piece of Daniel's fabled secret project. Behind the staged photos and carefully curated grief, Lucy was rotting. She doubled down on her shopping. New designer collections arrived in crates. Jewelry glimmered in piles she never even opened. Boxes stacked in corners of her penthouse like silent witnesses. The emptiness they promised to fill only grew larger, a yawning pit that swallowed every new purchase. At night, she barely slept. When she did, her dreams always returned to that final moment on the cliff. Daniel's scream, the plane slipping from her grasp, the echo of metal crashing into the abyss. In those dreams, she saw his hand reaching up from the dark, clawing for her ankle, pulling her toward him. She began hearing noises in the flat. At first, soft creaks and distant echoes, easily blamed on old pipes or the wind rattling the windows. But soon, they became unmistakable. Heavy footsteps in the hallway, the low murmur of a voice calling her name, the wet sound of someone breathing just behind her ear. One morning, after another night of online shopping and whiskey, Lucy woke to find her living room flooded. A thin layer of icy water pooled across the marble floor, soaking into the expensive rugs. She stumbled forward, shivering. The water led her to the massive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. On the glass, in dripping letters that looked like they'd been traced by a trembling, freezing hand, were the words, "Why did you let me go?" Lucy screamed, slipping on the wet floor. She crawled backward, her soaked hair clinging to her face, gasping as she scrambled to her feet. Frantic, she called an emergency plumber, sobbing into the phone that her flat was flooding. When they arrived an hour later, they found nothing. No water, no damage, no evidence of any leak at all. The plumber eyed her cautiously, as if she might be dangerous. Lucy could only stand there in her dripping robe, shaking, realizing with icy clarity that she might be losing her mind, or worse, that Daniel was making sure she did. She tried to drown him out. More shopping, more wine. She stopped answering calls from investors, her face no longer fresh and bright on video conferences. She ignored messages from Daniel's mother, who still left voicemails telling Lucy she was like a daughter and all she had left. The AI prototype, Daniel's final creation, sat untouched on her encrypted drive. Lucy opened it once, hoping to finally claim her golden prize. But the code was a labyrinth, a living puzzle she couldn't navigate. Lines of logic twisted in ways she couldn't comprehend, like a language only Daniel understood. She no longer knew where her mind ended and Daniel began. Lucy stopped leaving the flat entirely. The once stylish woman who turned heads on red carpets and conference stages now wandered through her penthouse in silk robes stained with spilled wine and mascara tears. The investors withdrew one by one. The AI prototype she promised them sat dormant, locked behind layers of code she could never break. Rumors spread. Lucy was unstable, grieving, hiding something. Her once loyal PR team quit, unable to spin her crumbling image. At night, Daniel's voice no longer whispered. It roared, "Why did you leave me?" Sometimes she saw his reflection pacing the flat, or felt his cold fingers trail down her spine as she lay paralyzed in bed. Once, she awoke to find wet footprints circling her bed, ending at her pillow. She would wake up to find the words, "I'm still here," carved into her arms with trembling fingers she didn't remember moving. She tried to bandage them herself, sobbing as she wrapped the gauze, telling herself it was all in her mind. But deep down, she knew better. Daniel was there. He was orchestrating every flicker of light, every phantom drop of water she felt sliding down her neck. She began to smell it everywhere, the sharp, cold scent of jet fuel and wet earth. She would scrub her skin raw in the shower, convinced she could wash him away, but the smell always returned, stronger, as if he was seeping out from her very bones. One afternoon, frantic and unable to bear the walls any longer, Lucy burst out into the hallway. Neighbors peered out through cracked doors as she raved and clawed at the elevator buttons, sobbing that Daniel was coming for her, that he was here to drag her back to the cliff. When security arrived, she fought them like a cornered animal, shrieking, nails drawing blood across one guard's face. They pinned her down, her voice echoing through the marble lobby. "No, he's behind you. Get your hands off of me. I didn't do it." Paramedics arrived minutes later, strapping her onto a gurney. Lucy's eyes darted wildly, searching every corner for Daniel's dripping figure. As they wheeled her into the ambulance, she caught sight of the building's glass entry doors. And there he was. Daniel stood on the other side, water pooling at his feet, watching her with empty, mournful eyes. Her scream rattled the entire block. In the days that followed, tabloids devoured the story. Genius widow suffers breakdown. Dark secrets behind tech empire. Photos of Lucy strapped to the stretcher circulated online, her once perfect hair matted to her face, eyes wild and empty. At the private mental health facility on the outskirts of London, Lucy was placed under heavy sedation. The sterile white walls offered no mirrors, no reflections, but Daniel found her anyway. She would wake up to find the words, "I'm still here," carved into her arms, trembling fingers holding a smuggled piece of plastic or glass she didn't remember picking up. Nurses whispered that she was hurting herself for attention, but Lucy knew. Daniel was there. He was controlling every shadow, every drop of phantom water she felt rising around her ankles. When she looked into the facility's plastic-shielded bathroom mirror, she sometimes saw him standing behind her shoulder, mouthing silent words she couldn't quite understand. She would squeeze her eyes shut, begging him to stop, to leave her alone. But when she opened them, he was always closer. Even sedated, Lucy felt the dampness on her skin, smelled the phantom scent of the cliffside and Daniel's final breath. She would scream that the room was flooding, that she could hear the groaning metal of the plane returning for her. Nurses always found the floors bone dry. In her final days of lucidity, Lucy realized the ultimate irony. She had sacrificed Daniel to save herself, to claim his genius as her own, but without him, she was nothing. She couldn't finish the AI. The investors vanished. The fashion world forgot her. Her empire crumbled to dust. leaving only an echo of what could have been. Daniel's ghost wasn't just a punishment, it was a mirror, forcing her to see the hollow, grasping shell she had always been. So what do you think? Sometimes the worst ghosts aren't the ones we see in the dark. They're the ones we create ourselves. Did Lucy truly lose her mind? Or did Daniel really come back? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more twisted tales. Thanks for watching. And remember, trust is fragile, and some betrayals never stay buried. Stay spooky.